Welcome. This is Damon Brown. You're watching Bring Your Worth TV. I'm an entrepreneurial coach. I'm here to help you as a side hustler, a solopreneur, otherwise a non-traditional entrepreneur. You're watching Bring Your Worth TV Wednesdays live at 1:11 p.m. Get that out of my mouth. Let's try that again. Bring Your Worth TV Wednesdays 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. I'm here in semi-sunny Las Vegas. You can subscribe for free at the link below. Welcome that those of y'all, I think that's how you say it, those of y'all that are watching on LinkedIn. Sometimes I'm over on Amazon and some of the other platforms. I appreciate y'all. Thank you for coming through and supporting the program. You can get my latest book, the 27th, the complete Bring Your Worth collection. It concludes about seven of my business books over the last decade or so. Some of y'all made them bestsellers, or some of them are bestsellers based on what you have done. Thank you so much. They're all available in here. It's very much a gift to y'all because with the 18,000 plus of y'all who have subscribed and the millions of y'all who have watched, uh, I didn't really start the show till about 4 years ago. It's a 4 year anniversary next month. And there was so much work that I did beforehand. And so if you like the show and you're vibing with the show, this would be an opportunity for you to catch up and do that. You can grab a book from damonbrown.net as well as wherever books and audiobooks are sold. If you're interested in the audiobook, also my gift to you, you can listen to the whole audiobook on here for free at the link below. Go and check it out. It's about 8 hours. I know it's a lot of stuff going on in the world today. There's a great opportunity for you to take a walk, take a bath. I just took a bath earlier today and just listen. There's a great opportunity for you to do so. 8 hours, it's on me. Consider it my gift to y'all. If you missed it a week ago, we talked about how to make a peaceful, affordable holiday. Two different aspects here. First of all, it's the peaceful part, which we'll get into a little bit more today with the topic of the program. As far as connecting with others, particularly since here in America, we just had a presidential election, super contentious. No matter what happened, there'll be some feelings. I definitely have some feelings. I'm guessing you do too if you're impacted by the stuff going on in America or if you're based in America. We also are going to be seeing our family members. If you celebrate Thanksgiving, Diwali, happy Diwali to my Hindi folks, all that other stuff. You're going to be seeing folks. So this is kind of talk about the peaceful part of it, kind of a precursor to this week's election and there's other elections happening in the world. Shout out to y'all, but also to the affordable part for you to be able to connect with other people and to be able to do that within your budget, particularly if you're like myself, you're a side hustler, solopreneur, otherwise a non-traditional entrepreneur. I've been independent for a very long time. You see the gray hairs. That's about as long as I've been independent. If you're independent, you need to find ways to make sure that you can show up and support your family or get that restorative social rest that you need. I talked about ways that you can do it in an affordable way. Don't miss last week's episode. Today's show, I couldn't think of a more appropriate topic: unlocking the power of solitude. When we think about solitude, sometimes we're thinking about, monks on a mountain somewhere. I have good friends that actually were monks, so respect to them. So there's nothing wrong with monkhood and taking that approach. But the real power, the real opportunity comes in us carving out our own lane within the rest of society. I'm going to be blunt about it. If you're going to make an impact in the world, you can't really opt out. That's not really how it works. If you want to make an impact in the world, you have to show up in a certain way. But to show up in a certain way and to contribute to the world that you want to make, you actually do need to find time, make time to actually listen to what's going on inside of you. I forgot to put it in the notes, but I'll throw it up right now. I have a newsletter at joindamon.me, joindamon.me. You can join it for free. And one of the things that I talk about in today's newsletter is about how you can show up in a certain way while still making an impact on the world. And let me rephrase that. Basically, what you can do is get still enough to find out what kind of impact you want to make and then go out into the world and make it. And it's not as simple as a black and white thing. It's not as simple as on and off. It is more of a restorative, cyclical thing where you might need that time alone to figure out what's going on, what matters to you. When I talk about unlocking the power of solitude, it means It could mean meditation for you. It could mean time to yourself. It could mean not engaging in social media, some way to silence yourself so you can actually hear what's going on in your heart, what direction you want to go in, and what kind of impact you will make on the world. If you go through those process of respecting those times when your body, your mind, your heart is calling for solitude, when you respect those times, those are often times where you get those insights, you can come back stronger and make it a better world. So we're going to talk about 4 ways you can do that. I know some of y'all are introverts. I know some of y'all are extroverts and you get energy from other people, which is that definition. Introvert means that you like being alone and you get energy from that. Extrovert means you get energy from other people. Really simple definition. This will apply to all of y'all. And I think solitude and having moments of stillness, which we'll get into, is wonderful, a wonderful tool for everyone to have, whether you're introvert, extrovert, super social, antisocial, it doesn't matter. All those things come into play as far as you getting at least moments of silence so that you figure out what you're all about. Sometimes we get mixed up when we interact with other people too much and we forget what we stand for. You can't just respond to things. You actually have to find out what matters to you. Today's episode is sponsored by Shortform. Shout out to Shortform. It is your ultimate book reader companion. I like Shortform for two particular reasons. Number one, it actually allows me to uh, get a great overview of books that I have not read yet, but I want to get into. And they make it really easy for you to purchase books through there or to go deeper into that topic. And it's a great, great guide to the books that I already know and love. And they're giving all kinds of insights that even some of the books are on my shelf behind my big head. And a lot of those books I've read like once a year, or I've read multiple times a year, or I'll read it and then read it immediately over again. They got the dog ears. I could show you a bunch of these books. All of them have the dog ears and all that stuff. This gives me an opportunity to go deeper and say, oh, okay, there's angles in here that I didn't even recognize because I just didn't have the insight. And short form happens to have the insight. So short form works in, actually, it logged me out, so I'll go and show you the basic version of it. As it says, it's way more than book summaries. And what it does is it allows you to go into different aspects and go deeper into it. So you can browse the books, and we'll go and do a quick browse right here. And if we want to browse my guy, Robert Greene, he's the author of many books. His most popular book, as some of y'all know, is 48 Laws of Power. There it is. So you see a summary there. Actually, I did log me in. So now you see the bookmark. And 48 Laws of Power is a massive book. It's really big. It's probably like 3 or 4 pounds, 3 or 4 pounds heavy. Especially I think there was a hardcover version. I think I had the paperback back in the day. So if you're looking for a particular law of power, you might not be able to go through all that. In my case, I was doing an episode handful of months ago where I want to talk about the 48 laws of power. One particular law, I was able to go in there and quickly find out what law it was talking about and to go deeper than that. And we do continue reading law number 18. Oh my gosh, that's funny. I swear I didn't play on this. Don't isolate yourself. What was I just talking about at the top of the show? Do not isolate yourself. There it is. The law of power. Never isolate yourself when you come under pressure. This just cuts you off from information you need and people could help you. And when real danger rises, you won't see it coming. Instead, make a point of being outgoing. Contact with others increases your power. Ah, lovely, lovely, lovely. So the basic argument with that is saying you can actually find that solitude and find that peace of mind, but don't forget about connecting with other people. If you're going through a challenging time, if you're having a hard time, that's not the time that you want to suddenly cut people off. There's a difference between having some quiet time, meditating, or doing your moments of Zen, as they say, but also there's a difference between that and actually cutting people off and being like, no, I'm not going to rock with anybody at this point. Short form is a great opportunity for you to go deeper, whether you're a bibliophile, which means a book lover like I am, as far as having your collection. There's just a fraction of my collection. I have a book collection of books, and you want to make sure that you go as deep as possible with the books that you love. Or, like I said, You're interested in a whole bunch of different subjects, or even there's a subject that you want to go deeper in, but you don't know where to start. Short form will summarize it for you. Thank you so much for sponsoring today's show. If you want to go ahead and get 20% off as of this recording on the subscription to short form, you can grab the link. It's just shortform.com/Damon, Damon, and you can also get a free trial. So no harm, no foul. Hop in, see if you like it. It's one of my favorite companions. All right, so today we're talking about how to unlock the power of solitude. As we talked about the very introduction of the show, it's not about isolating yourself. It's not about saying, I'm not going to rock with people anymore. It's not like saying, I'm going to be by myself. It's more about saying, I'm going to carve out time, whether it's just a fraction of a second, to be still enough to actually know what my opinion is, what kind of world I want to help create, and how I'm going to do it. What my opinion is, what kind of world I want to create, and how I want to do it. That I found, and I'm a business coach, I've coached hundreds of folks, including some of y'all that are watching. I found that that's almost a necessary passage. If you think about the hero's journey when it comes to Joseph Campbell, big fan of Joseph Campbell and the mythologies that he was able to organize and catalog. They are not his mythologies, but he was able to organize them and have these theories around them. There's always a period of time of solitude. Always. When people are doing revolutionary things or people are doing big things, there's always a moment of quiet before. Always. You can take Star Wars, you can talk about the Avengers Endgame with Tony Stark being lost in space. Pick one. There's always a moment of silence, always a moment of solitude. So we're going to get into 4 ways that you can kind of build this into your life. You know, I'm a very active dad. I have an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old. Been there since day one. There every single day. They keep me busy. And so even if you are very busy or you have other people that you're taking care of, there's ways that you can carve this out. So let's get into it. The first step that I found as far as unlocking the power of you being of doing solitude and unlocking the the power in being by yourself is by actually determining what kind of rest you need. Sorry, I had a little tech hiccup there. But determining what kind of rest you need. Now, there's many different types of rest. There's a rest of talking with one of your closest friends and talking to them for hours. It's the rest of having a cup of coffee and lingering just a little bit longer. There's the rest of sleeping in, taking a nap. As you guys know, if you've been watching the show, I love taking naps. It's almost a daily practice for me. There's different types of rest. For some people that I know, their version of rest is traveling and being on the road in a place where no one knows them and they might not even know the language. They get recharged from that. For other people, their rest is having a daily meditation ritual where they're still or they're meditating for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and that works for them. I have relatives that run marathons. That's a kind of solitary rest for them. What is the thing? What are the things, the practices that allow you to feel like you're back to yourself once you are social again? For me, it's a lot of things that I've mentioned over the past 400 or so episodes of this show. So love taking outside walks, love meditating. I meditate every morning. I love having those long conversations with really good friends, like usually for hours. And I love listening to nature and being still. And of course, playing with my kids, which is a really big thing for me too. Those are the things that I can create my space of solitude around. Even with my kids, it's not me being out in the world. It's not a big crowd. It's not very expensive. It's just me hanging out with my boys. And that in itself kind of serves as solitude because it's solitude within the confines of my nuclear family. I think one of the key things and one of the reasons why we don't get the solitude and stillness that we need is because we don't actually know what restores us. We don't know. When you say, hey, I'm burning out, or hey, I'm really stressed out about this, Or, hey, yeah, this thing happened with this relationship. I don't know what to do. I'm stressing out. I need to get myself together. What do you do? What's your go-to? Feel free to drop them in the chat, but it really is a it really is a broader question. And for the people that I've met over the years, and even some of the people that I've coached, sometimes we don't know. We just know I'm tired. We just know I need to stop. We just know we can't do this anymore. But those aren't actually actions, those are responses. There's nothing you can do about it. In the public speaking world or in the business writing world, which I do a lot with both ghostwriting and otherwise, we call those call to actions. What exactly is the call to action? I don't like the position I'm in. Okay, now what? What are you going to do? And sometimes our action is something that, and particularly in our Western world, we consider passive. I'm going to go take a nap. Why are you going to take a nap? Because I know that's the type of rest that I need right now. And when I wake up from my nap, I'm going to be sharper than all hell. That's knowing yourself. So part of the process and part of the reason why I think we have a hard time being still, creating solitude, getting deep rest is because we don't know what actually restores us. So what are the things that restore you? Feel free to put in the chat. Write it out on a piece of paper or in your notepad, in your phone. Doesn't matter to me. But if you don't know that part, determining what kind of rest you need, then it's the rest of it's kind of a moot point. Then what are you going to do? So when you have situations like, again, right here in America, it's a very tense time because there's a really tough competition as far as with the elections and all kinds of feelings bouncing around today. So how are you going to take care of yourself? You should have that on the ready. I'm not trying to judge you, just more because I care about your health. I did almost all of my healthcare, self care kind of rest things today. And it's like 1 o'clock here in Vegas. And I did most of them. That's not as a flex. It's more like I know what restores me enough to go and have a good conversation with y'all. What are your go-to things? You should have them. Have them on the ready. And then the idea of having alone time, making alone time, creating solitude, finding stillness, it won't be as big of a deal. The ideal time to do it is actually when you're not in a place of crisis or stress. It's when you're just thinking, you're just there. Another great time to do it is to recognize when it's happening. I happen to love dogs. And so I know when I go to the local dog park here, and I've made friends over there. So I don't own a dog, but it's kind of like the yacht thing. Like you shouldn't get a yacht, but you should get a friend that has a yacht. So you don't need to do that same type of thing, right? I have my own kids, but I don't have my own dog. And so yeah, so I know that hanging out at that dog park and just hanging out with the pets, some other stuff, that gets me into a vibe. And I just happened to be a place that I walked at. And I was like, you know what? Every time I'm at that park that has little cute dogs there, I feel better. Acknowledgement, bet. Great. Not feeling that great? Have some quiet time with a pet. Done. Add it to the list. So I'd highly recommend you figuring out what exactly is restorative to you. Once you figure that out, then you can get to the next steps that we're going to talk about. But it has to start with that. And that goes back to knowing yourself and being honest with yourself. And sometimes those things that really restore you, like I like world travel, sometimes they're not possible because of resources, whether it's time or money or energy or just commitments. So you find other things on the list. And the longer your list is, the more ways you can restore yourself. Speaking of restorative things, one of my favorite books from one of my favorite people, Susan Cain's Quiet. I first saw Susan at my first TED conference, I want to say 13 years ago now. And I was in the audience when she did this talk. I had never heard of her. Most of my friends and people had never heard of her. So I think it was kind of a breakout moment where she talked about the power and, frankly, the shame that went around being an introvert. Now, in my parents' generation, the term introvert wasn't really around. If it was around, it was synonymous with shy. And then shy was looked at as, particularly among men, we're getting into gendered conversations here, particularly among men, that was looked at as a weakness. He's an introvert, he's shy, he's awkward, let him be. He's not leadership material, as he used to say back in the day. For my generation, and I'm part of very young Gen X, for my generation, it started to become, oh, okay, he is an introvert. And so they're antisocial. And that was the conversation. Even going back to college, and I got all kinds of stories. I probably shared them in the past as far as like me being misunderstood because I didn't want to be around people all the time. Not because I didn't like people, it's just because I only had so much social energy. And like I'm talking about in this episode, I wanted to make sure I was centered as far as what I stood for, not just connecting with other people or getting the vibe from other people because they happen to be around and I'm sensitive to groups, right? Susan's probably a little bit older than me, so I'm pretty sure we're in the same generation. And she talks about that, but she also talks about the power that comes in having solitude, the ability to have a crystallized vision, the ability to be introspective, the ability to recognize and be self reflective of your own issues and flaws. Where if we stay busy all the time, how are we supposed to understand when we're not in the right, when we're not being as thoughtful as we can, when we're not showing up as our best selves? If we have no reflection at all, we're just doing. How are we supposed to grow? I talk about that in the Bite Size Entrepreneur, which also, as I mentioned, is in the Complete Bring Your Worth collection. As far as if you are building your career and you haven't stopped or paused or thought about your career in 5 years, then you'd have the same mentality that you had right now. As we're doing this live, it's 2024. You'd have the same mentality as 2019. Do you know what you're doing in 2019? I had a different mentality, proud to say. But that's because I reflected. And of course, there were a lot of outside things that made all of us reflect on our lives. My whole point is that Susan gets into this where there's an opportunity for us to grow because there's been, particularly here in America, such a bias towards action and being extroverted and rah, 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 yell, yell, yell. Real impact, number one, doesn't have to be like that. And number two, actually being quiet and strategic and understanding empathetic is a type of superpower. Those of us that feel that way should not feel shame about that. That's what I got from our talk. I'll throw that in the replay. I'll throw the TED talk in there as well. It's a fantastic TED talk. Again, I saw it in person. You might see my big head in the audience when I'm doing the pants. I can't remember. I haven't seen it in a little while, but I'll throw the link in the show notes after this goes live. And then you could also just go to TED.com or go to YouTube.com. Look up Susan Cain Quiet, and her TED talk has like 100 million views or something. If it was TED Talks, it would have went platinum. And appropriately enough, I did a live show probably about a year and a half ago, how to lead as an introvert, live Q&A, very similar to the format that we have here. And I talk about how if you're a little bit more reserved as far as socially, or you don't have a social battery, as some people do, there are ways that you can actually show up. You can make an impact in the world. And in fact, you might even be able to have a deeper impact because of that reflection and that thoughtfulness that naturally comes when you're not social all the time. Today, we're talking about unlocking the power of solitude. What kind of rest are you into? What restores you? It's probably better than rest. What restores you? What makes you feel whole again? When you're feeling jacked up and you're off balance, what gets you back to center? What gets you grounded? I shared some of that earlier in the episode. Let me know in the comments what makes you feel better in that regard. I'm entrepreneurial coach Damon Brown. I'm here to help you as a side hustler, solopreneur, otherwise a non-traditional entrepreneur. You're watching Bring Your Worth TV live Wednesdays at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. So we're talking about today unlocking the power of solitude. Number one, you want to determine what type of rest or what will restore you to the level that you need to be. Another key point, number two, is to find moments rather than exit events. define moments rather than exit events. When I used to live in Silicon Valley about 15 years ago or so, hard to believe that time flies. Shout out to y'all up in the Bay. We would talk about exit events. Exit events are times when something ends, hence the exit, and you get some type of resource back or reward, and that could take in a bunch of different forms. Your kids growing up and moving out of the house where you have an empty nest, that's an exit event. My company, Cuddler, with my co-founders, shout out to y'all, getting acquired, it's about a decade ago now. It was acquired. That's an exit event. They bought the company, they gave all three of us a check. That's an exit event. An exit event is when you have vested into a particular company. That means investing in it through being a employee, or one of the founders, as I was, or you literally have stock in it, and and then it suddenly goes public. It's on the stock market, and it's worth a certain amount of money. You decide to sell that. That's an exit event too. An exit event is something where there's a often dramatic change that happens, and then you are rewarded or given something based on the work or based on the investment you've done in the past. That's what an exit event is. Retirement. If it's a good retirement, particularly, sometimes we're forcibly retired. But if it's a good retirement, quote unquote, that's an exit event. So often we wait for the exit events to change our lives. One of the reasons why, as the kids say, particularly when I was younger, my passport stayed on pivot. I got to as many places as I could, particularly before I had kids, got married. I went to as many places as I could, particularly here in America. And that was because even at a young age, back in my, I'd say 20s, even late teens, I kept hearing people who are older, probably a little bit older than what I am now, hearing people when I was older, when they were older, talk about how they were going to postpone that trip to such and such, or they were going to visit and do such and such and learn how to do such and such when they retire. Some of them died. Not all of us make it to, our 60s, which is retirement here in America. In seeing that, even seeing folks who waited, postponed that rest, that solitude, what was going to be restorative, they postponed it, not because they had obligation to their kids or because their resources weren't able to do it, just because they felt a way about it and they said, I have tomorrow. I'll wait to this exit event. And then you turn 59 and a half, or you turn 65, or whatever your number is, and suddenly magically you're going to go on this world tour. Most of us don't have that for several reasons that are way too deep from this podcast. Way too deep. They will do a future episode about that. My point is that seeing them, I realize I need to experience this now. Doesn't have to be right now. Particularly when I was a broke grad student back in my 20s. Doesn't have to be right now, but I need to do this. As I'm in middle age now, again, I'm a young Gen X. I don't look back and say, "Oh, I should." No, I, I, with my means, I saw as much stuff as possible. When my kids ask me, "Well, this country's like this," I'm like, "Well, actually, it's not like that." The second time I went there, this was the experience there. Now, the first time I went there, it was like this. Then I went there a few years later, and it was like this. And no, they don't actually hold their silverware like that. They hold this, all kinds of game and opportunities that I can pass on to my kids. I'm giving this travel example because hope that's like the simplest one I can think of. But we do that every single day. You're sitting on the couch, you have a moment of quiet. You could take a quick nap, you could rest your eyes, You can daydream. Shout out to Dr. Natalie Nixon, author of The Creativity Leap, talks a lot about daydreaming. You can space out. You can, if you got kids, you can listen to your kids playing. If it's you have a window nearby, you can watch the birds or listen to nature. If you're lucky enough to live by water, I live in the desert, so if you're lucky enough to live by water, you can hear the water outside. If the weather's doing crazy things, you can listen to the weather. And so many of us don't take that pause. That matters too. Those moments, call them micro moments, that they restore equilibrium, even if it's just for a second, even if it's like a 5 minute cat nap, or not even nap where you just, those moments where you're just so tired, you just close your eyes and you don't go to sleep and you just sit there, just still for 30 seconds until your kid asks for something, or your job or the people that you work with need something from you, or the bell goes off and you have to get the dinner out the oven, or you realize that you have to head off to work. That's fine. But we wait for these exit events. We wait for, I'm going to go ahead and work my ass off. And then I'm going to take this 2 week, all expenses paid vacation. And again, I get to opine about, opine, forget the word out of my mouth, opine about that all day. But we assume that we're going to be suddenly in rest mode by the time we get that vacation. We assume we're going to get that vacation. We assume not only from a mortality standpoint, not only from a physical, I'm able to do this traveling standpoint, that's a whole nother conversation. This body is not guaranteed. I mean, from the standpoint of you might burn yourself out. You might be doing that mental damage, mental health damage to yourself before you even get to that vacation. So the focus is on finding moments rather than being big events. I know personally, for me and my co parenting partner, if there weren't spaces that were built into it, at least I can speak for myself, I'd be burnt out by now. I'm at home with the kids every single day. After 11 years of that, it's just getting to the point now where I do have enough room to maneuver, and here it's a silent place here, so I actually have space just because a lot of personal dynamics have changed. But for 11 years, yeah. What happens when you don't take those breaks, when you don't find spaces for solitude? What you're doing, and you know that in your heart is not sustainable, and you're banking it on some exit event in the future. What if the exit event never happens? Then we think about how much we're grinding and how much that matters as far as us taking those breaks, finding those micro moments instead of focusing just on the exit events. One of my favorite books, well, again, one of my favorite people, so tiny, The Pocket, Pema Children. Let me get that. There we go. Focus on our beautiful face. Shout out to Pema. Fantastic little book. It's something you can slip in your pocket. I've slipped it in my um, in my blazer pocket, particularly when I was going into contentious meetings and rough family gatherings. It slipped right in there. Like I need a passage right now. I did an episode last week about how to have a peaceful, affordable holiday. I talked about that more. The link is right below. Long story short, Pema is fantastic. She is a Buddhist monk that didn't get into Buddhism officially until she's probably around my age. I think she's about 85. So, yeah, got deep into it. Is originally from America, so she has a Western perspective on these Eastern philosophies. Has a great way of bringing things down to earth, particularly, again, I'm American myself. And each of these little passages is tiny. That's the whole thing. The whole thing. That's it. I think there's about 100 of them. Yeah, there's 110 of them, 111. Fantastic little book. I think it's like $10, $9. Go grab it. Walk around with it. It's really focused on understanding mindfulness and solitude. It is not heavily focused on Buddhist philosophies as far as talking about Buddhism per se. It's more about taking these philosophies and making them applicable to your life or more applicable. Fantastic book, one of my favorites. It's tiny. Just walk around with it, particularly again, if you're doing the family gatherings. Don't leave home without it like American Express. All right, live Q&A. This was about a year and a half ago as well. Improving inner peace. This live show was about mental health, how to get grounded. It goes much deeper than some of the stuff I'm talking about today because there's certain specific aspects that we go deep on. I think there's also some good questions from the audience that pop in there too, if I remember correctly. It was about a year and a half ago. One of my favorite episodes. Be sure and check it out if you want to go deeper. What moments are you guys taking advantage of? How are y'all showing up where you're able to frankly show up for yourself? How are you resting within the chaos of whatever your life is? And I don't mean chaos is a bad thing, just life is dynamic and uncertain and nutty sometimes. How are you taking care of yourself within that? Are you waiting for the big vacation when this money comes in or when the kids move out the house and all that stuff? Or are you finding spaces of solace within your life? I know, in my opinion, one is way more sustainable and realistic than the other. Be realistically, and we'll talk about this in a second, you grinding out the time is not realistic. When people say, "Oh, every day is a grind," some of that is a choice. We have moments where we grind. I had a moment when when I ground. Is that the past tense of grind? I have 2 degrees of journalism. I don't know what it is. Let's say grind. I grinded a couple days ago, not in a good way, and it was at late night. It was like that. A lot of people, some of you that are watching the show, needed my support. I was happy to come through. But then I rested some today. There's always part of a cycle. So how are you building in those little moments instead of waiting for a big moment to rest? I'll get off my soapbox. I'm an entrepreneurial coach, as you can tell, but put my coaching hat on. Damon Brown, I'm here to help you as a side hustler, a solopreneur, otherwise a non-traditional entrepreneur. Watch it Bring Your Worth TV, coming to you Wednesdays, live, Q&A. Jump below with the comments and questions every Wednesday, most Wednesdays at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. You won't get it through my mouth. Subscribe to Bring Your Worth TV below. I'm cracking myself up today. All right, so it's not just about the moments, it's also accepting if we're going to have a peaceful time. We'll get the right one up here. Having all kinds of tech problems. There we go. We're unlocking the power of solitude. We need to accept that everything is a cycle. I was talking about this a little bit earlier in the show, in fact, a few minutes ago. Everything is a cycle. What that means is that if you're showing up in a certain way, there are going to be moments where you're going to not be strong. There are going to be moments when you're tired. There's going to be moments when you're weak. You might not like to hear that. I don't like to say it, but my job is to be real with you. There's going to be moments where you're not going to show up, frankly, as your best self. One of the best things we can do is actually, number one, give ourselves a grace. And number two, that accept that it's a cycle. When we talk about we have to grind every single day, that we cannot waste a moment. And we plan on doing this for the long haul. Are we if you're grinding every single day and every moment, you don't stop, you don't take care of yourself, you don't rest. Are you really thinking long term? Again, I'm not a spring chicken. I'm halfway through my life. Even I'm like, okay, well, the second half of my life or whatever, knock on wood, whatever's left. Being on all 5 cylinders the whole time, it ain't gonna get you there. You're not gonna make it. If you're really about the long-term strategy, if you're really about the long game, shout out to Dory Clark. If you're really about the infinite game, shout out to Simon Sinek. I can speak all day about it. Shout out to both of them. If you're really about that long-term strategy, then you can't be about constant grind. Like you like you can't. They're not compatible. They're not on the same street. They're not on the same zip code. Nowhere near. If you're after social justice, shout out to my social justice warriors. If you're really about making impact in the world and making it more equitable, if you're really about uplifting your community and getting to the next level, you have to accept that everything goes into a cycle. There is no constant grind. There's a constant showing up, but there's no constant grind. When you get into understanding that things are a cycle, then it forces you to think more long term. If you think about I think it was the Vikings saying, at least I know it from the Vikings. It was probably some people before the Vikings that talked about first we feast, which is what the TV channel, that Hot Ones, if you're familiar with the Hot Ones show, with the hot wings, where people go on an interview. It's the company's called First We Feast. It comes from that term. So they did not invent the term. That's why if you look at the logo, it looks like there's a bunch of hairy Viking face on there, right? So that's where the history of the name of that production company comes from. I digress. It's like at dawn we go to war, but first we feast. It's not necessarily about we're going to go ahead and we just want to party, though. I'm sure they were partying like it could have been their last party because for a lot of them it probably was. Shout out to them for embracing that life is short because it is. It also meant we need to eat and drink and be merry and get our reserves together so that at dawn we'll be in our best fighting shape. You hear me? First we feast. Sometimes it cuts off there, but there's more to it. First we feast, then we ride at dawn. Why don't they just ride through the night? Why don't they just keep going? I'm sure there are really strong men and some women in there too. Why didn't they just keep going? Why didn't they just fight 24/7 if they really wanted to take over that territory or, get their women and children back, whatever the vibe was at that period of time? Even they knew, as savage and as intense and whatever cultural, compared to today's culture, however we might feel about that particular time in the Middle Ages or before that, they had the common sense to say, we need to rest first. We need to eat, drink, and be merry so that when we're on the battlefield, we're ready. Again, if you're really about that life as far as making social change, and a lot of people that I coach, it's not just a side hustle. It's not just a um, soulpreneurship. It's not just I'm going to build something and then get it acquired later or make a bunch of money, sell some stuff to people, invest in capitalism. For a lot of us, it's not just that. I'd say for almost everyone I coach, it's not. In fact, for everyone I coach, it's not just that. I'm guessing since you're watching the show, it's not just that for you too. It's also making a long-term impact. You cannot make a long-term impact without taking care of yourself. It's not possible. It's like you can't be a fully present parent to your kids if you're not taking care of yourself as much as possible. Doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It doesn't mean that you need to have a vacation all that time. Like, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that the higher that we're able to take care of ourselves, the higher we're able to lead other people, period. And so, again, if you're really about that life, my career path and the work that I'm doing with this show and with the best-selling books and stuff, that started when I was a grad student, very long time ago. If I hadn't rested, if I hadn't taken care of myself, then I wouldn't be here now. I'm positive. And there were a couple of years there where your boy almost didn't make it, where I was so burnt out, so worn out. I was done. And luckily, I was able to use these restorative practices to get back to myself. And luckily, I learned those lessons when I was much younger. So accept that everything is a cycle. You're not going to be on the grind all the time. That's okay. My favorite book, Rest is Resistance by Dr. Tricia Hersey. Shout out to her. Fantastic little book. She's the founder of the NAP Ministry, where it was people organized. I believe it started in Georgia, maybe in Atlanta. Excuse me. And she would organize people to rest, mostly people of color, because proportionally we're a little bit more susceptible to burn ourselves out for many deep systemic and cultural reasons, which I'll have to save for another show. This is one of those shows today that it could be 4 hours long, but for my own sake of rest, we'll keep it to an hour. Fantastic book. It talks about the history of rest, particularly when it comes to minorities and/or people of color, particularly Black people. It talks about how we can integrate rest into our lives and why taking a nap, daydreaming, and resting is actually a rebellious, anarchist, revolutionary thing, particularly for people that look like me. You think about women in the 50s, particularly those that were homemakers who were not given the respect that that was a full-time job. I'm a homemaker myself, run several businesses, and also I'm the main one that takes care of the house. So you got my sympathy for what y'all were going through 60 years ago. You think about the person who's a minority that has to, in some cases, work twice, three times as hard to get the recognition of other cultures, other people, to get the respect because they're doubted. There's a weight and there's a shame and there's a guilt that comes from us pausing to actually take care of ourselves because we have so much further to go, because we fought so hard to get to this point, because I have personally ancestors that died for my right to vote, my right to own a house or have an apartment, my right to marry someone who's outside of my culture. Born in any other time, my life personally will look very different. Even owning multiple businesses. Are you kidding? I'm talking to y'all on the air about once, twice a week. I can say darn near what I want, and no one's going to come knocking at the door. Hopefully. Knock on wood on that one. So if you know your history, particularly if you come from a culture where you weren't always given those freedoms, once you have those freedoms, stopping feels like an indulgence. It feels like a disrespect to your ancestors. But Dr. Hersey's actually arguing the reverse. As they say, I and we are our ancestors' wildest dreams. I'm thinking where my family line was 150 years ago. Here I am in a Brooks Brothers style suit, talking to 18,000 plus subscribers and who knows else all around the world, raising my beautiful Black and brown kids and making a good living and supporting y'all in your revolutionary acts. They wanted to be able to rest, but they couldn't. We have the opportunity to do so now, even if it's, as we talked about in the previous segment, even if it's in micro moments. This, I just scratched the surface on this book. Probably my favorite book of the year, hands down. It's, whew, Dr. Hersey, you're doing killer work. The episode from last week plays into this, how to make a peaceful, affordable holiday. There's going to be some holidays that you have, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Kwanzaa, Yom Kippur, pick one, Hanukkah, Diwali, By Beach. Like I can keep going. There's going to be some holidays that you have with your family, Not so much chosen family, but with your blood relatives or people that raise you that aren't going to go so well. And there's going to be other ones that go great. Your job is to find a place of peace and rest, no matter what those circumstances are. Even again, if it's just for a moment. Sometimes a moment is all you have, and sometimes a moment is all you need. Be sure to check out last week's episode if you're worried about that particularly. Again, there's a really intense political climate. There's a lot of deep conversations we're probably going to be having during the holidays as things wind up here and wind down here. A little bit of both here in America. I'm entrepreneurial coach Damon Brown. I'm here to help you as a side hustler, solopreneur, otherwise not traditional entrepreneur. You're watching Bring It Worth TV every Wednesday at 1:11 p.m. Standard Time, Vegas time. You can subscribe for free. How are you feeling as far as your guilt and shame around about taking a break? Because that's really key to understanding and resting within a sense of peace of mind and solitude. In other words, that reflectiveness, that stillness, that solitude doesn't really work if you feel guilt, which means internally you feel like you should be doing something else, or if you feel shame, which means you think you're going to be judged because you're not doing something else. Solitude and stillness don't quite work that well in that environment because you're worried about what you should be doing versus just doing what you're doing. How have you dealt with that? Jump into the comments. Let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And lastly, when it comes to embracing the unlocking the secret to good solitude, finding that stillness, it's about embracing the season that you are in. We're not always going to be in grind mode. We're not always going to be in busy mode. And yet, we can feel like we should be busy all the time. We could feel like we should be grinding all the time. That is actually against the laws of nature. It's starting to get chilly here in Las Vegas, and the coyotes and and the squirrels, because I live in the city. All these different folks were just hanging out. And they're like, you know what? It's getting a little nippy outside. Maybe I should go find that cave. Maybe I should wrap up getting these nuts because the nuts are about to run out, and I need to get myself together. Maybe I should go and pair up. Right, as the kids say, it's cuffing season. Let me go and get snuggled up right here with another squirrel over here and get ready for the winter because it does get cold here in Las Vegas. What season are you actually in? This year is almost up. Here in America, Thanksgiving's right around the corner, and then the holidays seem to go really fast. So we're like 6 weeks away. I'm going to repeat that. We're 7 weeks away from 2025. It's here. It's here, my guy. It's here, my gal. It's whoever you are. It's here. So whatever you're going to do, you need to put that strategy into place. With this year, it's all been about internal and behind the scenes growth for me. There's a lot of personal changes. You can tell that my office is different. So a lot of personal changes with me. My kids are getting older. My eldest just started going to middle school. Blew my mind because, of course, I remember when he was born. It's such a crazy journey, as you know, if you're the guardian and or have watched kids grow up. I've been doing a plethora of ghostwriting. If you're interested in my ghostwriting services, feel free to hit me up. Been doing a bunch of that. I've been into man to help other people shine. While I'm helping other people shine, because I'm used to being on the stage. So while I'm helping other people shine, I'm able to have my own solitude, do my own reflection, build my own base, and think about how I'm going to serve y'all better when I'm on the keynote stage again, which I will be soon. But well, I'll give y'all a heads up when I am. My whole point is that this is that season. This year, and I confidently say, because the year's almost over, for me has been about behind the scenes movement. Nothing sneaky, just I haven't been in the spotlight. I've been getting paid well, making strategic decisions, and building up my business, helping other people behind the scenes. That's what this year has been about. So me pushing to do, let's say, 5 episodes of the show and ramping it up, doing an episode a day, or me saying, yeah, I'm going to do a whole bunch of keynotes, da da da. It doesn't match the season. The quiet and the reflectiveness and the support, and I have a wonderful therapist and all these things, that's allowed me to be even stronger. Where I'm already looking at 2025. I'm literally making plans for 2025 right now, maybe further. That only came from me embracing this season. What season are you in? 5 years ago in 2019, I was entrepreneur in residence in two different organizations at once. I was traveling back and forth from here in Las Vegas back to Toledo, Ohio, to be the entrepreneur in residence at the Toledo Lucas Library Consortium. I forget what it's called, network, one of the biggest in the country. Shout out to them. Shout out to you, Jason, as well as Linda. I miss y'all. And I'm doing keynotes once a week, but my family had already moved here because we were in Ohio area. My family already moved here, flying back and forth. That was the season at the time. That was the season. Passport on pivot, spending time with my kids, and then hopping on a plane, dropping them off at school, and then hopping on a plane. This year has been pretty much the opposite of that. I spent so much time with my kids, so much time alone, so much time in quiet and solitude and reflection and reading all these amazing badass books. That's the flavor. So it would be a travesty for me not to embrace that. What season are you in? Is it the season for you to be alone? Is it the season for you to be quiet? If it's a season for you to be loud, for you to be outside, for you to be traveling, for you to be super productive and have all this outward motion, fine, embrace that. But you have to be real about yourself and real to yourself and say, okay, what season am I actually in? How can I make the biggest impact? My biggest impact this year is you. How am I supporting you? In 2019, my biggest impact was how many stages am I getting on? How can I tighten up my keynotes? How can I sell books and build and write new books so that they're supportive of the journey that I'm on? How can I build my coaching practice? Because obviously it's 5 years ago, it was a lot smaller. That was energy at the time. Energy this year, it's in the background. And the more I embrace that this year, the more powerful the results. I can feel the results. Not sound like an infomercial, but I can feel the results. But that comes from embracing the season that I'm in. What season are you in? You can jump into the comments and let me know. Because once you find out, again, kind of like the we talked about in the first portion of this conversation, as far as knowing what restores you, knowing what season you're in is just season that you're in is just as powerful. The amazing book, Stillness is Key by Ryan Holiday. Hope you're doing well. The link that I gave actually is to the best of, which includes, I think, Ego is Enemy, and I always forget the third one, but amazing book series. This probably is my personal favorite. It's in the title, and it's a bestseller for a reason. He talks about all these different historical things. If you know Ryan Holiday's work, my personal favorite book of his is The Daily Stoic. So he goes way back. It's not history like in the 1970s. It's like no, he's talking BC. All these different moments with people who found success, internal or external. A lot of people you probably haven't heard of. Bring it all the way back to today. I think the book came out like 10 years ago. So bring it all the way back to say 2014 with modern people at that time, and how them pausing actually built up a victory for them, internally or externally. A great follow up from this. And of course, why leaders need to pause is a short clip based on one of my live shows. It's only like 10 and 15 minutes long, but it talks about why we need to pause. And man, I can't argue for it anymore. What season are you in? How are you embracing it? I love to hear in the comments. Thank you for joining me today. Even in the replay, go ahead and jump in the comments. Let us know how you're showing up in your particular season. Again, my name is Damon Brown, You're watching Bring Your Worth TV. Most, if not all, Wednesdays live at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. Remember, you can always bring your worth. You can always build from now. Take care of yourselves and others.